1. Munich, Germany. Munich, the capital of Bavaria, is a city where history, tradition, and modernity seamlessly blend together. Nestled along the banks of the river Isar, Munich boasts grand architecture, lush green spaces, and a deep-rooted cultural heritage that makes it one of the most visited cities in Germany. The city is home to world-renowned landmarks such as the Marienplatz, where the glockenspiel chimes daily, captivating visitors with its animated figurines. The towering Frauenkirche, with its distinctive twin domes, is an iconic feature of Munich's skyline, offering breathtaking views of the city from above. The city's history is deeply intertwined with Bavarian royalty, whose legacy can be explored in places like the resplendent Nymphenburg Palace and the Munich Residence, both of which showcase opulent Baroque and Rococo interiors. The vibrant neighborhoods, such as Schwabing with its bohemian atmosphere and Maxvorstadt, home to numerous museums and art galleries, add to the city's allure. Beyond its historic sites, Munich is a hub of innovation and progress. It houses major multinational corporations, including the headquarters of BMW, whose museum and factory tours attract automobile enthusiasts from around the world. The city is also known for its exceptional public transportation system, making it easy to navigate the streets and explore all that it has to offer. One of Munich's defining characteristics is its strong beer culture. Traditional beer halls like the Hofbräuhaus date back centuries and continue to serve up massive steins of locally brewed beer, often accompanied by hearty Bavarian dishes such as Weisswurst, Schweinschacks, and Brezen. Beer gardens dot the city, providing the perfect setting for socializing under the shade of sprawling chestnut trees. Among the most famous is the one in the Englischer Garten, one of the largest urban parks in the world, where visitors can enjoy a cold beer while watching surfers ride the Eisbach River's waves. It was a crisp autumn morning in Munich, and the scent of roasted almonds and sizzling bratwurst filled the air. Oktoberfest had begun, and tourists and locals alike flooded the Versailles fairgrounds, dressed in vibrant dirndls and Lederhosen. Felix Bauer, a Bavarian through and through, had been looking forward to this day all year. His friends from university had arrived from all over Germany to celebrate together. He had his traditional outfit ready, a finely embroidered green vest, checkered shirt, and his prized Lederhosen, which had been passed down from his grandfather. Oktoberfest. Felix had always looked forward to Oktoberfest. It was more than just a festival. It was a tradition, a celebration of culture, camaraderie, and of course, beer. For weeks, he had been counting down the days, making sure everything was perfect. His plans, his friends, and most importantly, his outfit. He'd been saving up for the perfect pair of Lederhosen, something that would set him apart among the sea of traditional Bavarian attire. These weren't just any Lederhosen. They were handcrafted, a rich brown leather with intricate stitching, and a pair that Felix had worn with pride each year. The excitement in the air that morning was palpable. Oktoberfest was more than just a beer festival in Munich. It was a massive cultural event, and Felix was ready to join the thousands of festival-goers who would soon fill the beer tents. He had his friends lined up to meet at Marienplatz, Munich's central square, before heading to the festival grounds together. The sun was shining brightly, casting a golden glow over the city, and the anticipation of the day ahead hung thick in the air. But as Felix stood before the mirror in his small, cluttered apartment near Marienplatz, putting on his finest shirt, he suddenly felt a wave of dread wash over him. Something was missing. He looked down at his closet, scanning it. He wasn't sure why, but his mind was racing. He took another look, his eyes locking onto his dresser where his Lederhosen should have been neatly folded. But they weren't there. Panic crept up his spine. He glanced around his apartment, hoping against hope that he had somehow overlooked them, that they were somewhere in plain sight. His mind began to spiral. Had he left them somewhere? Did he lend them to someone? Or had they simply vanished into thin air? He pulled open every drawer, searched his closet from top to bottom, and even checked under his bed. Still no Lederhosen. His phone buzzed. It was Hannah, his close friend, messaging him to check if he was ready for the festival. Felix, now in a full-blown panic, quickly typed back that he couldn't find his Lederhosen. He felt ridiculous, even though he knew she would understand. Hannah was always the practical one, calm in the face of crises, and she immediately suggested he retrace his steps from the night before. The night before had been a blur. Felix had met up with Hannah and a few other friends at Hofbräuhaus, one of Munich's most famous beer halls. They had spent hours clinking steins, laughing over inside jokes, and basking in the unique ambience of the historic building. The air was filled with the sound of live Bavarian music, tourists and locals alike joining in the singing and cheers. It was the perfect prelude to Oktoberfest. Felix could distinctly remember the joy of that evening, but his mind kept racing back to one thing. His Lederhosen. Had he somehow misplaced them there? Without wasting any time, Felix grabbed his jacket and dashed out of his apartment, meeting his friends at the Hofbräuhaus. As they entered, the familiar warmth and buzz of activity hit him instantly. It was early, and the beer hall was already packed, buzzing with the energy of excited festival-goers. Everyone seemed to be having a great time. Tourists were snapping pictures, clinking their steins together in celebration, and chatting with locals who were already well into their drinks. The staff, who knew Felix from previous visits, were kind enough to let him search through the beer hall. He scoured every corner of the large rustic space, hoping to spot his missing lederhosen hanging on a chair or tucked somewhere out of sight. He even asked the waiters if they had seen any misplaced clothing, but the search yielded no results. Frustrated but not defeated, Felix and his friends moved on to the next location he could think of, the Englischer Garten. The sprawling park was one of the largest in Munich, famous for its serene walks and lively beer gardens, especially the one at the Chinese Tower. Felix vividly remembered taking a late-night stroll there with Hannah and the others after leaving Hofbräuhaus. The beer garden was an iconic part of the city, and the perfect spot to enjoy a nightcap or take in the peaceful landscape. Upon arrival, Felix and his friends began combing through the large grassy area around the Chinese Tower, where they had sat the night before. They approached early morning joggers and musicians setting up, asking them if they had seen a pair of lost lederhosen. Felix felt a bit silly asking strangers about his wardrobe, but his desperation was growing. As they scoured the area, Felix couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. How could something as big as lederhosen just disappear? Despite their best efforts, there was still no sign of the prized pair of lederhosen. At this point, Felix wasn't sure if he was more upset about the missing clothing or the growing anxiety of potentially missing out on Oktoberfest. The time was ticking away. His friends were starting to joke about the situation, but Felix couldn't help but feel the weight of the loss. He didn't just want to wear any pair of lederhosen. He had wanted to wear the ones that held memories of past celebrations, the ones that made him feel connected to the traditions of his city, his culture, and the history of Oktoberfest itself. It was now nearing late morning, and the atmosphere in Munich was electric as more people were gathering for the festivities. Felix, along with his friends, made a last-ditch effort to check a few other spots where he might have gone the night before. They even revisited areas around Marienplatz, hoping against hope that his lederhosen had somehow turned up there. But with every passing hour, Felix's heart sank deeper. His thoughts started to spiral. What if his lederhosen were gone forever? What if someone had found them and kept them? The emotional connection to the outfit, tied with the memory of the fun and laughter from the night before, made Felix realize how much he was going to miss them. The festival was going to happen without him wearing them, no matter how hard he searched. But despite everything, Felix refused to give up. He knew that no matter how many setbacks he faced, there was always the next Oktoberfest, always another chance to create new memories. Even without his beloved lederhosen, he could still join in the celebration, experience the joy of the festival, and continue his traditions with friends who supported him. The day wasn't lost yet, and the spirit of Oktoberfest was far bigger than any single piece of clothing. Bavarian culture. In the heart of Munich, where the cobbled streets echoed with the footsteps of generations and the air was always alive with the sounds of a rich cultural heritage, Felix found himself in a bit of a bind. It was a scenario that was almost too absurd to believe, The much-anticipated Oktoberfest was just hours away, and his beloved Lederhosen, the very symbol of Bavarian pride, had vanished. While the panic of losing such an iconic piece of clothing began to consume him, he still clung to the belief that he could recover it, or at least salvage his day. The thought of missing out on the festival, dressed in anything less than traditional Bavarian attire, was unthinkable. For Felix, the Lederhosen were not just an outfit, they were a celebration of the heritage and customs of his beloved Bavaria. The intricate leather pants, the embroidered suspenders, the rustic, earthy colors. It was all a reflection of centuries-old Bavarian craftsmanship and tradition. Oktoberfest was more than just a party for beer lovers. It was an opportunity to reconnect with the very essence of Bavarian culture, a culture that valued history, community, and, above all, enjoyment of life's simplest pleasures. Wearing his Lederhosen wasn't just about fitting in. It was about honoring the legacy of his ancestors, those who had worn similar outfits to celebrate the harvest, to mark important milestones, and to gather in good company. The idea of attending the festival without them was, in Felix's mind, akin to attending a concert without your favorite band. However, as the hours ticked by and Felix's search turned up nothing, he found himself growing more desperate. That was when, almost as if by fate, he found himself standing outside the bakery of his neighbor, Frau Meyer. The sweet smell of freshly baked bread and warm pretzels wafted out from her shop, filling the air and providing a momentary distraction from his escalating crisis. Frau Meyer's bakery was a staple in the neighborhood. It was the kind of place where the walls were lined with delicate golden-brown pastries, where the air was thick with the scent of warm dough, and where customers were always greeted with a friendly smile and a welcoming word. As Felix entered the shop, Frau Meyer was busy kneading dough, but she looked up, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Ah, Felix. You look like you're in trouble," she remarked, noticing the stressed expression on his face. "What's happened?" Felix sighed, trying to steady his breathing as he explained his predicament. "I've lost my Lederhosen, Frau Meyer. I've searched everywhere. My apartment, the beer hall, the park. I have no idea where they could be." The old woman's lips curled into a knowing smile. "Perhaps you left them with someone special," she teased, her voice light and playful, though there was an unmistakable glint in her eyes, as if she knew something Felix didn't. Felix blinked in surprise at her words. Was it possible? His mind began to race, connecting dots he hadn't thought of before. He had spent the night with his friends, first at Hofbräuhaus and then at the Englischer Garten, but the evening had ended at Lucas's apartment. They had all gone back there after the long night of festivities, exhausted but happy, and had ended up on Lucas's couch. Felix had taken off his Lederhosen at some point, but had he left them behind when they all crashed for the night? Could they have been forgotten in the excitement of it all? The thought hit him like a bolt of lightning, and suddenly, his panic turned into determination. With a quick nod of thanks to Frau Meyer, Felix hurried out of the bakery, clutching the warm pretzel she had handed him as a gesture of goodwill. The salty, comforting taste of the pretzel, still warm from the oven, helped ground him for a moment, providing him with a sense of calm before he set off across town. Felix dashed through the streets of Munich, his mind focused entirely on Lucas's apartment. He couldn't waste another minute. His Lederhosen were his ticket to the festival, and without them, it felt as though the entire day would be ruined. Munich streets, normally bustling with tourists and locals alike, seemed to blur as Felix rushed past familiar sights, the bells of St. Peter's Church ringing in the distance. He felt the excitement of the festival inching closer with every step. Oktoberfest was only a short distance away, and he could almost hear the music and see the tents filled with revelers. Finally, Felix arrived at Lucas's apartment building, breathless but hopeful. He banged on Lucas's door, his heart pounding in his chest. Moments later, Lucas opened the door, groggy and clearly not yet fully awake. He rubbed his eyes and gave Felix a mischievous smile. "Looking for these?" Lucas asked, his voice dripping with amusement. Felix looked up, his face falling as he saw Lucas holding up the missing Lederhosen, the very ones that had caused him so much anxiety just hours before. Lucas's grin widened as he casually tossed the outfit toward Felix. Felix groaned in relief and laughter at the same time. Course they were there. He must have taken them off when he collapsed on Lucas's couch the night before, too tired to care about anything but sleep. Thanks, man, Felix said, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over him. Lucas shrugged and smirked. No problem. Just don't forget them again, all right? Felix quickly changed into his beloved Lederhosen, relieved and grateful. It was as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. The traditional Bavarian outfit fit perfectly, and he felt a surge of pride as he looked at himself in the mirror. Now he was ready. The Oktoberfest celebration would finally begin in earnest. The festival grounds were alive with color and sound when Felix arrived. His friends, who had been waiting anxiously for him, cheered as they saw him approach. His Lederhosen proudly displayed for all to see. The air was filled with the sound of live Bavarian music, the clinking of beer steins, and the jubilant laughter of festival-goers. The massive tents, filled with people in traditional attire, offered a sense of community and belonging. Felix felt as though he had truly arrived. With a stein of beer in hand and the music surrounding him, Felix finally relaxed. The stress of the morning was gone, replaced by the warmth of friendship and the joy of the festival. His story of the missing Lederhosen would be one he would tell for years to come, a tale of minor disaster turned into a hilarious adventure. But most of all, Felix felt proud to be part of something bigger, something that transcended individual mishaps. Oktoberfest for Felix was about more than just the beer. It was about embracing Bavarian culture, the traditions that had been passed down through generations, and the sense of unity and joy that could only be found in moments like these. The Lederhosen, the pretzels, the music, they were all symbols of a culture that valued community, heritage, and celebrating life in its simplest and most authentic form. As the day wore on, Felix and his friends reveled in the festivities, toasting to good fortune and to the timeless spirit of Oktoberfest. The Lederhosen were no longer just a piece of clothing. They were a tangible connection to the past, a reminder that despite the occasional chaos of life, moments of joy could always be found in the most unexpected places.